Okay. Interesting thing with the truth movement is that the truth movement has so many facets that involved, the truth about taxes and money itself, the truth about the military, the truth about history, the truth about engineering and the sciences, the truth about poetry and philosophy and religion and all these different things, right? And people that have a certain regard for a certain kind of academics are going to have a problem with that. And not everybody is in the same academic place. Some people think that academia is some sort of a institution that properly self-corrects itself. And, when you're in there, everything obviously seems right with the world because you're there. Look at me, I'm a professor. Obviously, the profession can't be that bad if I'm allowed to profess within it. And thus, you're going to have a hard time having somebody already with credentials bitching about how unfair it is about the credentials, right? You hardly see the guy who's got credentials saying there's something wrong with the credential process. So thus, here's all these people with credentials that they keep the respectable opinions of respectable people of the public to protect effectively their authority, right? And then this is where all sorts of things like peer review come from, et cetera, et cetera. And as you learn how this processes work, and you look at it in juxtaposition to its blindness to the research in other places, because the research wasn't properly vetted. It becomes the issue that people will think it's suspicious that something wasn't being properly vetted when it's presented in front of you, because you don't realize how nobody wants to be prepared to, you need to be able to satiate somebody's ignorance-based questions. It is the blessing that they have questions despite their ignorance, right? Now, if the premise of the question is wrong, it takes a little bit more, right? If the premise of someone's question is wrong, it takes a lot more explanation, because now you have to sidetrack the answer to the question because they have to understand a prerequisite. This is where people can lose their fucking patience on both sides. And then the question is only serving to ignite the gaslight. And we don't always know the difference between an innocent inquiry into basically a false rabbit hole because you found something else in there that matters to you in the whole reason on your soul level as to why you give a fuck about this subject to begin with. Otherwise, shut the fuck up. Jet fuel melts fucking steel. I can live my entire life not knowing that jet fuel doesn't melt steel. I can live my whole fucking life. Who cares, right? But the part of me that has a fucking responsibility unto my own people has to care, because 20 fucking years ago that was an important fucking conversation to me in context of the life and the world that I lived in and thought I lived in. And then we turned off reason for a long enough period of time about that. You know? In 20 years, we will have our facts straight about medicine, treatment, virology, you know, gene editing therapies. We'll have all of our facts straight about that in 20 years, just like we got all of our facts straight about it, about this whole thing in 20 years. In 20 years from now, we will have our fucking facts straight. With a whole bunch of truthers left on the floor, burnt out, following wrong theories about a very correct assessment that you just put the wrong theory into, right? And then we get into the point of purpose. January 6th happened because the facts in context discovered by truthers changed in 2016, and all of a sudden there became a pathwork for this kind of truth. It became a pathwork for application in the political sphere. And the part of the public that either settled for less or are happy with their undeveloped understanding of the world are all of a sudden very, very angry when a bunch of people that they don't care that their blindness to the way systems work, the way a government works, the way a school works, the way a business works, etc., the way the social fabric of that workforce works, or that whatever it is, in whatever facet of life works, that you just look at them like they're just terrible people that can't be happy with what they got. And it's just like, you're the one that changed the rules for fucking them. You don't understand the rules were changed because you don't know the fucking law. You're a history person, you don't necessarily understand them. The law's place in the guidance of history, right? You just make an assumption that there isn't bullshit going on in the courts. And there's a lot of courts where there's no bullshit going on. You know, there's a lot of people that have determined in their personal cases, you know, that things were not bullshit. You know, it's just like, yeah, that guy was guilty. Yeah, that guy was innocent. Here's all the whatever about it. You know, there's not even an interest in larger powers tainting the outcome, right? And so that became a major point of fact, is just the ultimate, like, the truth movement had needed to come to a place where it's like, listen, it's time for some fucking results. It's time for some fucking results. And that's when their guy came in to say, hey, vote for me and I will deliver the results you're looking for. And it's the nature of our republic, and the other side believes in voting just as much as you are skeptical about voting, but you said, hey, this guy is a voice I want to promote because it represents my questions. It represents my questions. And you were so frustrated with so few answers based on that premise. And whether the man in question was deliberately sabotaging his own political career to undermine that truth movement, to undermine my good, quote, intentions, which is the best one can fucking say when you're a part of the political machine, is just the projection of intention, isn't it now? Yeah. So with that projection of intention, you're pushing back, you're creating your own space in the world, right? Because before you did, right, you know, like a lot of people that spoke up like that, regardless of being wrong and everything else, it's just like I could see what was going on with that certain kind of pain with, and you know, it's just like, it's fine, you've had plenty of people to talk to about it or whatever, but if you're surrounded by nothing that gives you a solution out of a certain suffering that you can definitely point at and say, look at how this business does things that did that, or how this government has, you know, actually interprets and what it actually does with the laws when you see what they do, right? So on and so forth. You had to come out with it, right? You had to come out and be bold, right? Even if it undermines things, right? Because, you know, like, if you can't, let's just say, like, for instance, Trump supporters have dealt with enough pain fighting the whole weather issue and being called science deniers because of some very sound alternative dissenting studies on the causes of perceived climatary changes. as well as studies on the critical components for other hypotheses, right? Like the carbon footprint hypothesis of the phenomenon of climate change. Climate change is like gravity. It's a phenomenon that nobody has a scientific explanation for. We just have math equations that are based on modelings, and we haven't even replicated those models yet. And then you become a gravity is fake person, you become a flat earther, and now you can't help the Trump supporters with climate change because you're a flat earther, right? Because they don't want your help. You're toxically retarded. And this is what a lot of people went through. And you're making you make fun of a whole bunch of people, like making fun of people that like you have no idea this little world that people were boxed into. People have no idea the little world that I was boxed into. I mean, you guys do. I've talked about my evolution, and I try to explain the mind prison that one starts in, at least one such as myself, for various whatever reasons, perhaps petty and immature. So you've got a bunch of people that have near agreements on the facts, and they don't want to bond together because they're trying to save their reputation, which is already under attack, and they don't want to have to sit there and defend other people's beliefs. They're having a hard time defending their own. And that's what's happening to people. And we can be very insensitive to that. Because it wouldn't matter if that embarrassing person has more people behind them or not. Right? Which of course it shouldn't matter. I mean, you should have standards and convictions, obviously, right? It's just like, don't sit there and just bend to someone's influence. Don't bend to my influence. But what you do want to do is to know that some people are just afraid that they're not going to be allowed to be themselves, have their feelings, and express them without violence. So they get nervous. Literally, their nervous system sparks up in self-defense, and it becomes uncomfortable, and they can tweak out about it. Right? And granted, that's not your problem. You still have to stand on your own. But you also have to have the compassion to understand that that's what's going on with them. And is that your intention to, to shut them out on that level? Right? Because I think we forget how we are as people all the time. Easily. Right? Because it becomes painful, because no, I don't want to entertain the manifestation of such a world as you see in your head, right? It becomes that, Like, it becomes this whole effing alien thing that your imagination can't stem. I can imagine exactly how the worlds of my enemies function and my friends that I laugh at. And I'd imagine that maybe they can too. But, we also ultimately don't like necessarily something along the lines of, like, you know, if you're more of a Christian fundamentalist type, a biblical literalism person, and that gets tied up in everything, that's a very special kind of toxic. Very special kind of toxic. That I've talked about ad nauseum, right? And so they can bring a certain energy that's wrong too, right? You know, like, this is why people don't like a lot of the January 6th stuff, because of course you had Jacob Chansley, Jake Angeli, him leading a Christianized paganism, or a paganized Christianism, which is pretty fucking typical of what somebody's gonna do in the age of Aquarius. And then leading a pseudo Native American New Age prayer in a place of Congress. And, you know, this is like, you may hate that happened outside of the regular order. I hate the shit that happens in that room in the regular order. So this is why the accusation of insurrection doesn't really mean anything. It wasn't an insurrection, it was an interruption. Excuse me! I'm here to interrupt you people for ignoring the due process that was ignored in my state when this shit happened. And that was the point of January 6th. It's like, excuse me, I have to interrupt this because you are acting like the media can just lie to us, and we're not going to show retribution because the proper authorities are also the same people who were in control of the blockade of due process. And you just can't be a smug little elitist who thinks that we're liars for political gain. And that's what was going on January 6th. Everything else is just the chaos in the mix and the agents in the midst. That'd be a good title for another video. Chaos. Yeah, chaos in the mix. Chaos in the mix and agents in the midst. That works perfectly. Oh, that works perfectly. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later.